Let's move to our next topic, which is instance nested class. The question is, what is instance nested class? When you define one class into another class without using a static keyword, then that class is known as instance nested class or inner class. Okay. Now, how we need to define it, how we can access it. Okay, as you guys already know that all the rules that were defined for static data members will be as it is applicable to your static nested class, because static nested class were treated as static property of your outer class. Similar to that, instance nested class will also treat as instance property of your class, which means that all the rules related to accessibility that are applicable to your instance properties of your class will be equally applicable to your instance nested class. Means instance nested class will also access by using object reference. Before we will jump into the implementation of instance nested class, let's first discuss one more very important interview question, that is, when you compile your Java class, which is holding instance nested class or static nested class, how many class files will be created? As you guys already know, as per the Java rule, for every single Java class, we will always have a separate class file after compilation. And in that class file, we always have respective class bytecode. So if you have one outer class which is holding two inner classes, inner class 1 and inner class 2, and when you compile it, it will create outer.class to store outer class bytecode, and it will create outer dollar inner class 1 to store inner class 1 bytecode, and outer dollar inner class 2 dot class to store inner class 2 bytecode. In that way, it creates separate .class files for each of inner class. Okay, now let's jump into the implementation of instance nested class. In this implementation, I have outer class which is holding static data member and instance data member, and then I'm defining instance nested class. This class is not having static keyword, that's why it is treating as instance nested class or inner class. Okay, now inside here I am defining one instance method show, and which is accessing x and y, both static and instance data members of outer class. Is it valid? Yes. For instance nested class, you can access static and instance data members of outer class inside it. Okay. So I am printing both of the data members without any problem. Okay. Now when it comes to access of show method, obviously show is an instance method. You need to create object of inner class, and because inner class is instance nested class, that means I need to access it by using outer class object reference. So I first need to instantiate outer class object. You can see here I am creating outer class object first, and then using outer class object reference, I'm mainly accessing or creating inner class object here. Okay. Once I created this inner class object reference, I can hold it in inner class reference variable. Here you can see this. To create inner class object reference, I need to access outer class object reference. Okay. Because there we are using association. Okay, but when it comes to accessing the class name, still the rule is same. You can access class name using outer class name, and you can access object reference using outer object reference. Once you get the object of inner class, you can call show method, and then you will get result as 10 and 20. That means inner class is easily able to access static and instance data members of outer class. Now let's move to our next implementation. In this implementation, again, I'm creating instance nested class. In here, I'm defining instance method. Along with the instance method, I'm trying to create static method inside my instance nested class. When I try to do this, it will start giving me error. Okay. This static method or static properties cannot be declared inside inner class. If you remember, the same type of rule were there for static nested class, but these rules are completely vice versa of static nested class rules. In static nested class, you have learned that you can define static and instance both type of data member and member function inside static nested class. But in instance nested class, you can only define instance methods inside instance nested class. Similarly, the other rule was in static nested class, you can only access static properties of outer class. But in instance nested class, you can access static and instance properties of outer class. So both classes are having rule completely vice versa of each other. Okay, now let's see one more implementation in instance nested class or inner class. What we are doing, we are implementing data shadowing here. My outer class is holding one data member with the name of x holding 10, and then inner class is also holding one variable with the same name x and holding 20 there, and my method which is defined inside my inner class is also holding x name of variable. This variable is obviously a local variable holding 30 there. Okay, now when I access this x, obviously the local variable is going to get priority and this 30 is going to print. But when I say this dot x, which one is going to be accessed? Because this is generally used to access class level data members and I have two classes there. Okay, so in that case, my inner class level variable is going to be accessed. That means this x is going to be accessed and it is going to print 20. If you want to access class level variable of outer class, then you need to access the reference of outer class. Means you need to access this reference of outer class. To access this reference of outer class, you need to use outer class name dot this, and then you will be easily able to access outer class level data member. So here I am accessing first local variable, then my inner class level data member, and then I am accessing outer class level data members, and then I am printing them. Let's run this. You can see here I am getting all three here. Okay, so it's working absolutely fine. This is how instance nested class works.